Hey everyone, it's Ivan with kitbadge.com, out here for another gun review, and today talking about this little guy right here, which is the Walther PDP F-Series. Before I jump into the features, what I like about the pistol, how it's done for me, which honestly, spoiler, I actually really like this pistol. It's done great. I will tell you the worst thing about this pistol, which is the naming convention. Walther was like, you know what? Let's call this the F-Series for female. That way we can cut off a huge section of the market we would otherwise get. All in a name. So silly. But it's fun renaming things, right? Just like if you saw my video on the PDP, referred to it as the personal defense pistol. People are like, no, it's performance duty pistol. I'm like, no, it's not when I'm holding it. And so credit where credit's due. My buddy Bill Rapier, he's like, yeah, we don't call it the F-Series for female. We call it the F for fighting. I'm like, yeah, I can get behind that. So Walther PDP fighting pistol. And show you some of the features. As far as features on the pistol goes, there's tons of basically crossover with the full-size PDP. A lot of the same things that if you appreciate them, then you will definitely appreciate them on this. To include, I want to say they call it their super terrain, their slide serrations, which they're incredibly deep. And as I mentioned before, when I first looked at it, I'm like, that's kind of weird. And now anytime I handle a pistol that has like regular serrations that are like barely in there at all, I'm like, these are terrible. I actually have come to really appreciate these really significant serrations on here. And same with their texture, same thing, texture on this thing. And then also their triggers on here. Basically similar to a Glock trigger, except way better in that you have that safety bar in there, and more on that in a little bit. But you have that little safety disconnect essentially. And so if you try and press down the trigger without depressing that, can't do it. And then press that, take it up. There's like that right there. Honestly, in my experience, it is the cleanest factory trigger I've shot of any like just factory gun. Really, really nice trigger. And they actually make their like performance flat face trigger, which is actually really amazing as well. Don't have it in here. Other things that are similar, optic cut. So when you get a pistol, you basically reach out to Walther, say, hey, just got this pistol, serial number XYZ. I want this optic. And so they will make a plate, or they will ship you a plate for whatever optic, whether it's Armor, Footprint, Acro, things like that. Right here, I actually have the SCS for the PDP from Holosun, which is awesome. It sits incredibly low. You can co-witness your irons with that optic. It's really nice. And yeah, as an aside, pretty cool optic for this pistol, especially as just like a carry gun, no battery, anything like that. Pretty much it's on forever. Auto adjusts. Other features with this pistol that are actually unique to it for the F-Series, that fighting pistol, is this dimension is actually smaller than on like the full-size PDPs, and you still have interchangeable back straps. So if you have really small hands, you can basically get it to the size of your hand, or if you have bigger hands, you can of course put bigger back straps on it. So again, this fighting pistol made for honestly just people with smaller hands. And the other kind of big departure from the PDP, which they managed to somehow do, I don't know, but basically the amount of force, strength required to charge it, like to pull that back, is less than full-size PDP. So typically, oh my gosh, he's gonna say it, women are not as strong as men. Sorry, I said it. And so with that, it's also not just women. I mean, biologically, men tend to be stronger. So for women, the fighting pistol, they designed it so that there's less force required. Where does that come into play? It comes into play everywhere. Whether you're getting new shooters to include young shooters who haven't fully developed, think kids, things like that, they can actually, with the musculature they have, charge this. Or no one likes to think about it, but you get old and muscles deteriorate. So as you get older and age and have less strength, you're also able to do that. Other places it comes into play, like honestly just being fatigued and losing grip strength, things like that. When you're really cold, again, less force required to charge the pistol, which is a win across the board for a fighting pistol. And something else I would be remiss not to mention that has become honestly one of my favorite things with the PDP series, to include the F-Series, the mag release. And if you look over on this side, you can actually switch it. So you can make it left-handed. So if you are shooting left-handed mag release. But the way it is, when you depress it, it comes out. But it's basically, there's basically fencing. So this piece comes along here. So it's difficult to accidentally press it. And if you are trying to press the mag release, you can't self-defeat, meaning when you press through, no matter kind of where your hand is on this side, you can't keep the mag, you can't basically cover this mag release on the other side with your opposite hand, which actually happens all the time with Glocks, till eventually people are like, oh yeah, I need a break and create all this space so that I can actually drop the mag and not just press as hard as I can into my hand. This one, I still do it sometimes with Glocks, and especially with newer shooters where you're like, no, press the mag release, and they're pressing, my boys will be pressing so hard and just straight into the other side of their hand. You're like, oh yeah, just like wreck your grip, come away from it, and then press, rather than keeping like a more solid grip and still being able to press that mag. So I don't know, I actually really like that feature. And since we brought Glock into the conversation, while this does come with plastic sights, you can actually adjust the rear sight, like rather than just drift it. And I will say the plastic sights it comes with are actually totally usable, unlike Glock sights. Which brings me to how have I used this and how has it done for me? Well, I, have actually carried it a lot as an EDC, concealed carry, and get my holster out of there so I don't misplace my holster. Actually, my buddy over at Carey Concealment, I was like, hey, can I get a holster for a PDP F-Series with the TLR7 by Streamlight? He's like, sure. He's like, any particular color? I'm like, no, I don't care. And so I probably should have said I cared, because this is what I ended up with. But I've actually carried this as, again, a concealed carry for quite a while. It's done a great job for me, and I've done a bunch of shooting with it, to include probably a competition or course at some point. Yeah, just put a lot of rounds through it.
Stand by.
He was using like a hit or something, like open fire, and he said like everybody in the neighborhood started shooting specifically at him because they all just see it all flash.
Hit! 6. Hit! Left side, all 4. Hit! 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 Finished. Unloaded. Show clear. Clear. Slide forward, jammer, and holster.
Pistol assault. Stand by.
I still just continue to really enjoy shooting this pistol. Part of it is I am the market for it. Again, one of the things they tried to accomplish, and they did accomplish, is it's a smaller grip size. It's not a smaller magazine like any of your flush fit 15 round magazines, so you can't use the like 17 or 18 round magazines for the like full size PDP. But I want to say for the compact, I don't know, I get lost in their naming convention. Ultimately though, 15 round flush fit magazine. You can get base plates, extensions, things like that for them. But I really enjoy this. And with my hands the size they are, usually wear like medium gloves and stuff. This fits really well. It's also really controllable. Little things like this actually aid a lot in my experience with respect to shooting this pistol versus any type of like, oh, you know what? We're gonna put some like finger placement notches in there. You're like, my fingers don't go there. Whereas this, it's like, cool, your fingers can go anywhere along there. I'm like, all right, I can dig that. Yeah, just across the board, this is done good. Have I had any issues with it? I actually have early on. So there was something weird that happened kind of when I first had this, and it happened occasionally. And that being, same thing can happen with a Glock or anything with essentially a trigger safety in there. In that, if you press it hard enough to the side and then try and press back, you cannot do that. Yeah. Of course, usually with Glocks, even if you do that, it's pretty easy to just overpower it and still pull through. You can. With this one, for whatever reason, if you catch that edge in there, there. Finally got my finger far enough in, pull it. Why does that happen? You're pulling the trigger wrong. Maybe, but, like when I pull the trigger, regardless of the trigger press, I'm pulling the trigger and I want the gun to go off, because that's how that works, especially as a fighting pistol. And so the place it actually cropped up a couple times was, actually speaking of running this in courses, I was up at the AMTAC training center and shooting a run and gun, and there were times that I absolutely like hard pulled on the clock trying to shoot this thing. And you're pulling the trigger. No, like I'm not. I just happen to have a little bit of force moving in that direction, which I made it happen again. There we go. Which basically locks out the pistol. Is this an isolated incident? I have no idea. It may well be. I am a sample size of one. I actually talked to one of the people over there at Walther, and they're like, you're kind of the first person we've heard running into this issue. That said, I've talked to my buddy Bill Rapier, who also shoots Walthers, and he's like, yeah, I've had that happen sometimes. And I'm like, okay, well, it's not just me. And again, it's not something that happens all the time. And if you're pressing straight back, like, it pretty much never happens. But under duress, if you get like something not an ideal like trigger finger placement, that can happen. Again, sample size of one. Having said all of that, what are my thoughts overall on this pistol? Honestly, I really like it. This pistol has done great for me. I enjoy shooting it. It shoots really well, or I guess I shoot it well. Am I gonna shoot groups with it? No, like it'll outshoot me. I'm not gonna shoot groups with it. Offered two different barrel lengths, this being the 3.5 inch. They also have 4 inch, and they're also compatible with, or interchangeable rather, with all of your different PDPs. And that, I guess I already pulled the trigger. So you can take whatever slide and whatever frame, slide it on there and configure the gun you want. So if you want a smaller frame and a longer slide, even if it's not a factory option or offering, you can actually mix and match, which is pretty cool. Price-wise, I think MSRP is like $6.99 or something like that. Obviously, street price is definitely cheaper. As I mentioned, this one is set up with this Holosun, which has done a good job for me on it. In part, just being able to co-witness with like the factory sights, and you never have to adjust it, which is handy for a carry gun. Depending, also it doesn't meter back or I think necessarily forward, it meters off the side. So it gives you a more true light reading as far as if you illuminate in a dark space, like adjusting this. That said, this dot is generally a little brighter than maybe you would usually adjust it manually, but hands off. And then yeah, TLR7 fits on here, works great on this pistol, makes for a really nice little concealed carry package that, again, shoots really well. Great factory trigger. But if you're interested, there'll be links down below, you can check it out. And last but not least, if you appreciate my content, want to support it, greatly appreciate it. One of the ways, just liking and sharing videos, or going over to my website, kitpatcher.com, picking up stickers, patches, things like that, or supporting me directly through Patreon. Little as $1 a month helps me go out, create more content for you. But as always, thanks for joining us at kitpatcher.com. Look forward to seeing you next time. Someone's gonna be like, all they shoot is Glock sights. Cool, man.